The steam from the shower clung to the bathroom mirror, a thick, warm fog that blurred the edges of my reflection. I stood at the sink, the cold porcelain a shock against my palms, trying to steady my breathing. It was just past 7 on a Tuesday evening, the kind of ordinary night that usually meant leftover meatloaf and catching up on laundry. My name is Claire, and my life had become a careful blueprint of such ordinary nights, a structure I'd built diligently, brick by brick, after my world had fallen apart 2 years prior. The house was quiet, a silence I was still learning to interpret. It was no longer the heavy, grieving silence after my husband, David, passed, but a transitional one, filled with the faint echoes of a life being rebuilt. The loudest sound was the drip of the showerhead and the frantic beat of my own heart. I was staring at a small, plus-sign-shaped symbol on a plastic stick in my hand. Pregnant. The word echoed in the hollow of my chest, a joyous, terrifying bell tolling in a silent chapel. David and I had tried for years. It was our quiet sorrow, a dream deferred through rounds of treatments and fading hopes, then extinguished entirely by his sudden diagnosis. The cancer was swift and brutal, stealing him from us in a matter of months. The dream of a child had been buried with him, or so I'd thought. In the chaotic, lonely year after his death, I'd made one impulsive, human mistake with a kind but fleeting man who'd offered comfort. It was a single night of weakness, a desperate grasp at feeling something other than soul-crushing loss. And now, this, a wave of nausea, unrelated to the pregnancy, washed over me. How could I explain this? How could I bring a new life into this home, a home still tender with the memory of a man who would not be its father? My eyes stung with tears, of panic, of a confused, guilty joy, of sheer, overwhelming loneliness. I was so lost in the whirlpool of my thoughts that I didn't hear the soft click of the front door opening, or the footsteps in the hallway. The bathroom door swung open. I gasped, fumbling the pregnancy test, which clattered into the sink. Standing in the doorway, his broad shoulders almost filling the frame, was my stepson, Ethan. He was 19, a carbon copy of his father with his sandy hair and serious grey eyes, but taller, lankier, his youth not yet hardened into a man's solidity. He was holding a flat, square box in his hands, a tentative, almost shy smile on his face that instantly froze. His eyes darted from my tear-streaked face to the object in the sink, then back to me. The color drained from his cheeks. The steam seemed to pull back, the air in the room turning crystalline and sharp. Claire, I'm so sorry. The door was unlocked and his voice trailed off, his gaze locked on the sink. The happy surprise he'd clearly planned was evaporating, replaced by dawning, horrifying comprehension. I saw the journey in his eyes, confusion, recognition, and then a pain so profound it mirrored my own from 2 years ago. He took a stumbling step back, as if physically struck. Ethan, I can explain. I choked out, my voice a ragged whisper. But what explanation could possibly suffice? I'm sorry, your father is gone, and I'm having another man's baby. He didn't speak. He just stared, the unopened pizza box in his hands, a Tuesday night tradition from his childhood, a peace offering he'd brought to bridge the awkward distance that had grown between us since he'd left for college, now a absurd, tragic prop. The silence stretched, a canyon opening between us in the small, steamy room. Then, he turned. Without a word, he walked away, his footsteps retreating down the hall. A moment later, I heard the front door close with a soft, definitive click. The rest of the night was a blur of cold numbness. I mechanically ate a piece of the now cold pizza he'd left on the kitchen counter, each bite like ash. I texted him, please come back. We need to talk. No response. I called. It went straight to voicemail. The fear that had begun in the bathroom solidified into a cold, heavy dread in my stomach. I had not only upended my own life, but I had shattered my last, most precious connection to David. Ethan didn't come home that night, or the next. My messages went unanswered. The silence was no longer transitional, it was accusatory, filled with the ghost of David's disappointment and Ethan's hurt. I called his dorm roommate, who said he hadn't seen him. Panic, a familiar and hated foe, began to gnaw at me. On the third morning, sleep-deprived and hollow-eyed, I was contemplating calling the campus police when I heard a key in the lock. He walked in, looking older, weary. He carried a duffel bag and wouldn't meet my eyes. Ethan, thank God, I breathed, rushing toward him. He flinched, a slight movement that stopped me in my tracks. I've been at Mark's, he said flatly, referring to his best friend. I needed to think. Please, let me explain, I pleaded, my hands twisting together. What's to explain? He said, his voice low and strained. He finally looked at me, and the betrayal in his eyes was a physical blow. He's only been gone 2 years, Claire. 2 years. Was it going on before? The question hung in the air. Poisonous. No. Ethan. God. No. Never. It was one time. One stupid, terrible mistake after he was gone. I was so lost, and so alone. My words tumbled out, desperate and pathetic even to my own ears. And now you're having a baby, he stated, the word baby sounding foreign and harsh in his mouth. So you're replacing us. Replacing him. That is not true, I cried, the tears coming freely now. You are my son. Nothing will ever change that. This doesn't change my love for you, or my love for your father. How can you say that? He shouted, the controls snapping. Everything changes. This house, our family, it was all we had left of him. And now you're bringing some stranger's kid into it. What about my dad's memory, Claire? What about what we meant? He picked up his duffel bag. I can't be here right now. I'm going back to campus. Ethan, please don't go. This is your home. It doesn't feel like it anymore, he said, and the finality in his tone broke me. The weeks that followed were a desolate landscape. I went to my first prenatal appointment alone, listening to the swift, miraculous gallop of a tiny heartbeat in a cold, clinical room, and wept. I started showing a gentle curve that felt like both a secret and a scandal. I told the father, who was supportive but clear, that he was not in a place for a family. I respected his honesty, but it deepened my isolation. The nursery that had once been a vague, hopeful dream was now a looming, terrifying reality. I sent Ethan ultrasound pictures. I texted him updates, silly things like how I was craving pickles and ice cream, trying to inject some normalcy. He responded only with terse, necessary replies about mail or his old tax documents. The chasm between us seemed unbridgeable. The turning point came on a rainy Thursday in late October. I was 6 months pregnant, struggling to assemble a crib alone in what would be the nursery, the room that had been David's study. My back ached, my fingers were sore from forcing stubborn screws into pre-drilled holes, and a wave of hormonal frustration crested over me. I threw the useless Allen wrench across the room and sank to the floor, sobbing, surrounded by the skeletal pieces of a family I felt utterly unequipped to build. I didn't hear him come in. The first I knew was a shadow falling across the plywood and instructions. Ethan stood in the doorway, damp from the rain, watching me. His expression was unreadable. You're doing it wrong, he said quietly, his voice rough from disuse. I looked up, wiping my face with my sleeve, too tired for pride. I know. He stood there for a long moment, then sighed, a deep, weary sound. He walked over, picked up the wrench, and surveyed the chaos. The sides are inverted. The holes don't line up like this. He began disassembling my haphazard work, his movements efficient, so like his father's. My heart hammered against my ribs. I didn't dare speak, didn't dare move, as if any sound would shatter this fragile, unexpected moment. In silence, he rebuilt the crib frame. The only sounds were the click of parts fitting together, the rain on the window, and I breathing. After 20 minutes, the sturdy structure stood assembled. There, he said, not looking at me. Thank you, I whispered. He nodded, still avoiding my gaze. His eyes traveled around the room, taking in the pale yellow paint I'd managed to put on one wall, the unopened boxes of diapers, the lonely rocking chair in the corner. He was looking, really looking, for the first time. It's a girl? He asked, his voice barely audible. Yes. He swallowed hard. Did you and Dad, did you have a name picked out for when you were trying? The question was a blade, twisting gently. Yes, I said, my throat tight. Eleanor. After his mother. Ethan's jaw clenched. He nodded once, a sharp, pained movement. Eleanor. He tested the name, and it seemed to cost him something. Are you using it? I shook my head. No. It didn't feel right. This is a different story. I think I'm going to call her Lily. Lily, he repeated. The tension in his shoulders eased, just a fraction. A name that wasn't a claim on the past. A new story. He didn't stay for dinner that night, but he didn't run either. He came back the following weekend. He said he was there to mow the lawn before winter, but he stayed to help me move the heavier furniture into the nursery. We worked in a careful, quiet truce. He began to come by every Sunday. We'd order pizza, reclaiming the ruined tradition, and work on the house. He installed safety latches on the cabinets. He helped me paint the final walls of the nursery a soft, calming sage green. We didn't talk about the baby directly, or about David, or about that night in the bathroom. We talked about his classes, about my work, about the mind-numbing boredom of assembling baby gear. It was a slow, cautious rebuilding of a bridge, plank by plank. One Sunday, as we were taking a break, sipping lemonade on the back porch, he spoke without preamble, staring straight ahead. I was so angry because I thought it meant you forgot him, that you were moving on from him, from us, that my dad was just erasable. I put my glass down carefully. Oh, Ethan, forgetting your father is an impossibility. He is in every corner of this house, in every good memory I have, in every decent part of me. He is in you, in your smile, your stubbornness, the way you tilt your head when you're thinking. This baby, Lily, she will know about him. She will know she had a father who was brave and kind and loved deeply, even if he never got to hold her. She will know she has a brother who has that same strength and love. You are not being replaced. You are being added to. He was silent for a long time, his eyes shining. I miss him so much it hurts to breathe sometimes, he admitted, his voice cracking. I know, sweetheart. Me too. Every day. He looked at me then, really looked at me, for the first time in months. I'm scared, he said, the admission soft and young. I'm terrified, I replied with a watery smile. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. We'll figure it out. It wasn't a grand proclamation of forgiveness, but it was a start. A partnership, forged not just from shared grief, but from a hesitant commitment to a shared future. When I went into labor 3 weeks early, it was Ethan I called. He drove me to the hospital at 3 a.m., his knuckles white on the steering wheel, muttering, "It's okay, Claire, just breathe," more to himself than to me. He waited through the long hours, fielding calls from my sister and his grandparents. When the nurses asked if he wanted to come in, he hesitated, panic in his eyes. "You don't have to," I said, gripping his hand. "Yes, I do," he said, squaring his shoulders. "I'm her brother." And he was there, a steady, pale presence in the corner of the room, witnessing the messy, miraculous arrival of Lily into the world. When they placed her, clean and swaddled, in my arms, I looked over at him. He was staring, transfixed, all the anger and pain washed from his face, replaced by awe. "Can I?" he whispered, stepping closer. I held out the bundle. "Meet your sister, Ethan." With infinite care, as if handling something more precious than glass, he took her. He looked down into her tiny, wrinkled face, and something profound shifted in his expression. He smiled, a real, full, unguarded smile that was all his own. "Hey there, Lily," he murmured. "I'm your big brother. I'm gonna look out for you." In that moment, in a sterile hospital room smelling of antiseptic and new life, our family was reborn. It was not the family any of us had planned. It was patched together from loss, from a mistake, from grief, and from a choice to love anyway. Later, after the flurry of activity had died down and I was resting with Lily sleeping on my chest, Ethan pulled the chair close to my bedside. The surprise box he'd carried into the bathroom that terrible night felt like a lifetime ago. "I brought you something," he said, his voice rough with emotion. He pulled a small, familiar velvet box from his pocket. It was David's wedding ring, which he'd kept after his father died. He opened it. I took it to a jeweler. Had them make two. Inside, nestled beside David's plain platinum band, were two delicate pendants on fine chains. Each held a small, sparkling chip of the platinum, shaped into a simple, elegant lily. "One for you," he said,